Welcome to the podcast designed to fuel your success selling technology solutions. I'm your host, Josh Lupresto, SVP of Sales Engineering at Telarus, and this is Next Level Biz Tech. Hey, everybody, welcome back. We got a fun episode for you today. On with us, we have got Adam Burke, VP of Sales at Quest. Brother Burke, welcome on, my man.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me again. This is awesome. I always love listening and catching up on episodes. And when I get a chance to join, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, you didn't bomb on the first one, so we figured like, hey, why not have you back? So no pressure, but hey, let's give it a try, right?
Hey, you didn't bomb. Welcome back. Thanks. That's awesome.
So it's a backhanded compliment for a Friday. So we're talking today's title. We're talking channel myths, mistakes, and $1 million moves. We talk a lot about kind of lessons learned, things that we've gotten wrong in the past. So, we've got some secrets that we hope to help uncover here to help partners get these things locked in and deals locked in. So, for anybody that hasn't heard, Adam, we had another previous episode 132 that Adam and I were on. We just talked a lot about, security and negotiations, and I think you got a cool background. So, for everybody out there, go listen to that if you haven't heard that one yet. Lots of good stuff on there. So, Adam, let's think about here. You've got this cool military background, and as you come from that, I mean, maybe start us off with how did that shape your approach to negotiation, leadership, and how does that carry over into kind of working in the channel?
Yeah, so been with Quest going on 15 years now after finishing up a short stint in the United States Army. And my first getting involved in the channel was basically trying to understand the landscape, understand the players, understand the rules of the game, rules of engagement, if you will. And it took a lot of time. So when we were talking about this episode and what we're going to be talking about, kind of failures. Definitely had a lot of failures early on. Understanding the rules of the game, the players involved. Took me about 4 years to figure out what a TSD or a master agent was, coming from our VAR background, and the different ways to engage there. But from a negotiation standpoint, when we're talking to partners and we're going through the sales process with folks, really understanding the game. And when I say game, I mean the engagement that you're in and the services that you're providing, and who are the other players, what are the motivations of the partner, what are the motivations of the client, and then ultimately knowing what's important to our organization, and kind of trying to figure out the Venn diagram and the overlap where it can be a win-win for everybody, and really trying to be honest about that. A lot of people we found when we're working on opportunities, sometimes they don't even know the game that they're playing necessarily. They don't know how to negotiate a software licensing deal versus a product resale purchase or a data center engagement, or a complex system integration application development job. These are all different maneuvers. So in the Army, we had battle drills, right? Basic thing is you have different battle drills in different scenarios. So just for my Army buddies, no, I'm not that weird officer who wrote a handbook for my sales team on battle drills so don't make fun of me. But we do have certain moves and certain kind of standard operating procedures for, hey, when this type of an opportunity presents itself or this type of a challenge, here are the courses of action you can take to accommodate that shift. And you try to standardize while at the same time not becoming too rigid, where you have 10 SKUs and those are your 10 only SKUs, and hopefully the customer fits within those 10. That's definitely, there's risk both ways from becoming too bureaucratic and too regimented versus, staying flexible. You gotta maintain that balance to be effective.
Yeah. It's kind of it's a blessing and a curse, I suppose, to have all of these SKUs, right? I mean, we grow up in this space in the channel of going, okay, this provider has product A, this provider has product B, this provider has product C. Which one does your customer need? And when the customer comes back and says, well, I have this weird, COBOL thing, or I have this weird infrastructure or data center project, doesn't really fit into that that structure per se, right? So we are kind of we've had a lot of lessons learned, I think, over the past few years, and I'm excited to kind of help others kind of learn from of how do we avoid some of these in the future, but also the end goal is how do we help translate these things that may be seemingly binary into a world that is not binary. But how do we operate within confines so that we can know consistently what people could bring you or what they can't bring you or what's a deal or what's just a an exercise, those kind of things. So I think there's a lot of good to be learned there.
Yeah, and something that I've learned is um, there's no necessarily wrong strategy in the channel. It's just what is your organization built to support, right? So our organization is built in a certain way that and sometimes can be viewed as, well, that's a little bit different than the way this provider does it. So for example, a lot of providers really want to do one or two things and scale to the moon, right? Rinse and repeat and do those one or two things really, really well. And that's a fantastic strategy, right? And they do that one or two things really, really well. They grow. They have a couple offerings, and that's what they do. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So sometimes we'll get into um, passionate discussions with partners about the way that things should be done. That's the way maybe one supplier does it. We tend to take a little bit more of a customization system integrator approach where you can't scale because it's so diversified, right? There's so many different aspects of the technology stack that we're okay with the one-off conversation. We're okay kind of moving outside that box, and that's one of our strengths. But at the same time, if you're looking to scale from 1,000 managed service clients to 10,000 managed service clients in 2 years, um, that's not necessarily gonna be the game plan you go with. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. We use partners in the channel that are single threaded on secure storage operations, or they focus on is endpoint protection. We'll bring those providers into a use case and bundle them in. But that's kind of it's a decision that you have to make as far as what do your strengths and weaknesses want to be. I don't know if you remember back when you were kids. I was a nerd. I'm guessing you were probably definitely one of the cool kids and not
Yeah.
a nerd.
Yeah,
But
my bowl cut, my cargo pants like really put me at the top. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. But you remember I just always think of the old Marvel cards, right? Where you look on the back of the Marvel card for the superhero, and they have speed, agility, durability, flexibility, all those different kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
rankings for their use case there. Or if we really want to get geeky, we could talk about Magic the Gathering, but let's not go there yet.
Sell them and make
Um,
money. There's my investment advice. Yeah, go ahead.
there you go. Yeah. But sometimes, you build your strengths based, and you build your company based on what you want to do. And so what we've been really successful at doing with partners is understanding the business outcome, and then we built the company to have those different battle drills and have those different resources brought to that opportunity as a specific engagement. But the downside, I want to be 100% candid, is we don't have the ability sometimes to uh, sell that client on why that methodology is better than the person who's scaling
Yeah,
10,000 times. And that's
fair.
that's that's the reality.
Yeah. No, no, no. Fair point. Right. It's. I think the game is about finding out who's really a fit for what. I mean, I think that's all of our jobs. Delivering up and helping these customers at the end of the day, and mating that certainly to the large vendor ecosystem, the supporting OEMs, all of those different things. And so that's the matchmaking job, right? And that's where we hopefully come in and help. So let's talk about maybe first lesson. So you think back about the past few years. What's a hard lesson learned? Maybe one that you've learned, you've seen, or a partner, or just maybe kick us off with that. When it comes to what's it take to win the business.
Yeah, so sometimes the hardest lesson to learn with a partner is you see them going down a path where you've been down that path before with a client. It might be responding to an RFP. It might be, leaning into a pre-sales engagement and ignoring potentially what we call yellow lights and red lights when we're evaluating how to engage. A classic one, we're an MSP, right? There are MSPs that are considered the incumbents. And there are some serious red lights when you're coming in to help an organization that is considering transitioning from one MSP to another. And sometimes a really frustrating scenario for partners is they're told one thing by a client around their transition from one MSP to another and the opportunity that's in front of them, but they kind of ignore the red and the yellow lights that maybe signal that client's not quite ready to move away. And we've been through hundreds of these, right? We've been through thousands of engagements where we're talking to clients, understanding their transition plans, who owns the assets, how long does it take to actually move from a firewall provider and a Azure partner or a hosted instance partner and all of that to a new organization. And one of them is just time. One of them is just the time to migrate and the cost to migrate and the associated kind of risk and benefits of that move. And sometimes partners are really, really reluctant to ask those questions and kind of really dig into the idea of, hey, are you kind of understanding what else is in the market right now? And would you like some consulting around, what's the MSP landscape? Or are you seriously wanting to move and we need to do a full redesign effort and documentation, everything like that? And it's a hard lesson for partners to experience that after, because sometimes they'll kind of give away the consulting and give away the engagement on the upfront and spend hours and hours and hours, only to find out, a couple months in that there's no revenue there. They're not leaving from their incumbent. They get the Dear John letter. Hey, sorry, business reason we had to renew with this organization. And that can sting for them, especially if you kind of at the outset, kind of called out, hey, these are some things you might want to be aware of, and here's some gaps in your plan. And again, I fail on this all the time, like all the time. I get duped and ignore yellow lights and red lights, but that's probably, it's a hard lesson to learn.
Well, let's. This is a fair point, right? I think we all want to be, myself included, right? When I was going door to door, I thought that everybody told me that they really wanted to buy my $3,000 vacuum, and it turns out that's a lot of money to pay for a vacuum, and people didn't like telling my smiling face no because they felt bad, and so I learned that maybe I could uncover that a little differently, a little better, right? In a parallel, I guess, what is a because what we want to be, what the partners want to be, is they want to be fast. They want to get an answer, right? We know that customers have a sense of urgency, right? So we kind of want to relay that sense of urgency. But when somebody comes and says like, "Hey, I got some MSP needs. I want to swap some things out." What are the things that make you say, "Whoa, red light, yellow light"? Is it the, "Hey, we want to do everything"? But I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is it that? Like, what are the things to look for in a conversation like this that we could do a better job at flushing out?
Yeah, so we tend to really focus on, why do people make changes? Oftentimes people are going to make a change in their life or in their technology because of some type of a pain or some type of an event. So when we're trying to understand why someone's doing something, we're typically looking for, is there a pain that's driving this, right? Is this did someone change the licensing scheme? Did they get bought and all of a sudden their pricing doubled? Did they totally drop the ball on a remediation effort? Was there an outage? Was there a breach? So was there pain that was significant enough to mandate a move? Or is there an impending event that's happening? They're going for a certain certification. They have to go through an impending audit. The managed service provider that they used to work with just went away, or they lost a key person, or they lost their one engineer. Those are typically what we call catalyst events. So we're looking for that catalyst or that reason. And a great way to figure that out is just ask the question. I know sometimes people get uncomfortable about this, but ask the question like, well, hey, what happens if you don't do anything? You
I
know?
don't hear that. I love that question. I don't think that's like a level of inception in the conversation, I think, because I think it throws people back because they're just not thinking like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if they can't answer that question, and sometimes partners will interpret that all of a sudden, well, we're not interested. No, it's not. We're not interested. It's just, hey, guys, I don't think they're ready yet. They're not. They don't. There's no impending event. There's no driver here. Would it be great? Would it be awesome? Like, is there all sorts of cool new technology that we could leverage for them? Could we help them? Could we be thought leaders and all that fun stuff? Yeah, but really kind of peel it back to why people make decisions and why people do something different. It's there's some type of a catalyst that's driving them to make that decision, or there's an impending event, or there's an impending pain point that's been identified. Everything else is a much lower problem. In my opinion, most of the rest of it is a very low probability of success. Um, and to your other question, like, hey, another red flag or yellow flag is, hey, we want to do everything, scope out every aspect of our MSP and our stack and our MSS and every service you have. I mean, we've done it. We've landed the plane on some massive deals, with your partners. But sometimes starting small is a much more attainable green light to, hey, let's start with a database assessment, or let's audit your controls around your firewall, or let's see how your internal network is segmented. Let's do a little bit of a network audit or a health check around your security. Or, we can put together let's put a little phase one engagement around a data center move. If you were to do this, let's flush out some budget numbers for moving you to Azure or AWS, just so you're going into it eyes wide open. But here's the thing: we would charge for that type of a thing, right? We would put together a design and kind of go in with the lead with that, that on the front end as a billable engagement. Whereas sometimes this is an area that we had to learn as far as communicating with partners. A lot of partners will kind of give that away, and they say for free, but it's not really free. It's included in their service on how they're getting paid on the back end from suppliers. So it's not really free. We're doing things for an expectation of a return. At Quest, we typically are a little bit more upfront with that idea. Hey, we want to help you. We would love to help you. And here's what it would cost for us to help you.
Well, so you bring up a couple key points here. I want to speak to some history that's been successful with this strategy. I do want to come back to the idea of BANT when it comes to qualified leads and things like that, and see what your perspective is on that. But I do like your start small approach, because also some people that are a customer that's meeting Quest for the first time has no idea who you are. So the idea that a CIO is going to cough up everything. I mean, maybe that's maybe in like a private equity portfolio engagement, and they're trying to slim down, and they want to kick out an MSP, and there is a justification to kind of rip out all that. I guess I could see that's a much more realistic scenario. But if I look back at some of the deals that we have done, we may have signed a very low. I've seen the customer sign a very low, near $0 MSA to get an agreed upon slated hourly rate for XYZ services. Right. And you guys are kind of you could do the bill of materials based on the hours need, pull from your bucket of resources, and people are like, oh, okay, I use that guy for database. I use that person for, an Azure migration. Right. And here's 10 hours that were slated to be billed, and we thought that's all that was going to be billed was 10 hours. And then we look at the commission reports and the order reports, and we see this thing that was supposed to be a couple grand is now 10, 15 grand. And we call you up and say, is that right? Did you guys overpay us? You go, no, they just turned out they used us for a bunch of stuff, and then they discovered, well, yeah, they actually helped us execute on that. I wonder if they can help us with this thing. So there's this never ending thing of the deals never seem to stop where they start necessarily, right? If we do good on that little first piece. So I'm a big fan of kind of the MVP idea of that. So that's been cool to see.
Yeah, and that's kind of that land and expand, virus theory, if you will, like just get involved in something small, work with them mutually. It's a mutual benefit, right? We get a small contract, get a new customer, partner gets to introduce maybe a service that they're not typically engaging in. And we just kind of help out on an ad hoc basis. We call that our technical on-call support engagements. Extremely successful in the middle market. And yeah, and then it just kind of grows. It kind of evolves from there. Some of our largest contracts have started out with something as simple as a database administrator helping with a SQL query that was taking too long.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's your perspective here? This is a little more of the old school smile and dial. I got a call center. I'm cold calling, right? Everything needs to be BANT, right? And I'm a big fan of the BANT methodology, though. You got budget, authority, need, and timeline. And does my deal or does my prospect have that? Does that strategy still kind of relate? Like, should we be trying to connect those dots on every deal? What's your, I guess, perspective as you think about opportunities?
Yeah, so I think that has to do with the level of energy you're going to commit to that deal, right? So if maybe they don't have budget authority, or maybe they're not maybe they're not the decider. I got to do my George W. Bush impersonation, but maybe they're not the decider, or have decision making authority, but they do have influence, or they do have a couple other things. It just depends on how much you're going to charge into that opportunity with resources, because we all have limited resources on how much we want to spend with time and people and things like that. So you got to kind of pick your battles. So if it's fully qualified, it's ready to rock. Okay, let's get an assessment. Let's get an advisor. Let's get a consultant and get in there and start ripping things apart and taking a look at what we can do. But if it's not, then that's okay. Maybe you get in there and you have a capability discussion around what could happen when they do have budget, or what could happen in that when they do have the authority to make the decision. It's all relationship based, and what we're always trying to do is because like I said before, our strategy is based on pain and events, right? And if you're not around when that event happens or when that pain occurs, you're vulnerable. Your pipeline goes away. So strategically for us, we want to talk to and meet as many partners, as many people as possible. So in the event they have trouble, they think, oh, those Quest guys were creative and they could help out in a couple different areas. This pain point that I have right now does not fit cleanly into that one box of, MDR provider, or that one clean box of data center or infrastructure. So that qualification you're talking about, fantastic for assessing, okay, green light, go, everyone hit the door, we're going in, versus, we're not there yet. Let's throw up a drone, right? We're not going to commit. Again, to all my Army
Is
buddies,
this a battlefield reference? Are we like saving infantry soldiers? I get it. I respect it.
I apologize for that's so lame. But anyways, throw up some. You're not committing boots to the ground, but you're going to observe. You're going to talk to them. You're going to see how they're doing. You're going to plant the seed for future opportunities. And something we do, we learned that the best way to kind of to get that going is through what we call capability reviews. So we've incentivized advisors. Hey, let's do a capability review. Let's get on the phone, talk with your client, understand what they're trying to do, and walk through the capabilities they could leverage if they want to.
I like it. I like it. Let's talk about a previous. I mean, let's layer in maybe a previous misstep. Let's keep the let's protect the innocent here, but let's think through. Okay, we've got some lessons learned from missteps that I know you've kind of got in the coffers. So how do we take what some of these lessons are and recognize that customers are buying? They're buying a little bit differently. It's a different buying cycle. It's an explore. It's a I have to I'm expected to do something with AI. Some people are coming around to what they want to do. Some things we've already sold into, and they didn't realize the ROI would come so quick. And so we're kind of meeting people at all these different stages. And I'm not saying like everything is about AI, but how do you take that and just recognize it seems like the buying cycles are changing a little bit. So what do we learn? How are we moving it forward?
Yeah. So lessons learned for that is definitely go into these opportunities, um, not expecting and not pretending you know exactly what's driving the decision. We had a classic scenario the other day. Long-term partner, advisor within the Teleris partner network. They had a client who we had thought was very price sensitive. We had done a massive deployment for them. They were adding additional sites, and some significant things in those sites changed. We went from 5 doors to 20 doors for our access control system. We went from 3 cameras to 15 cameras. Our wireless access points went from A to Z, or from 3 to about 12 at this site. The site at least doubled in the infrastructure requirements. We had thought, and the partner had thought, that the organization was going to be extremely price sensitive and really, really upset about the change request. And so we had talked to the people who were making the decisions there, and we came to find out after kind of worrying about the shift and worrying about the issues, they were not worried about the price. They were worried about two things: delivery timeline and our ability to operate as trusted partners and advisors and give them a transparent update as far as what the change was. Now, we probably had 5 or 6 internal calls, burned multiple hours of our time, probably a couple of your engineers' time on that call, kind of worrying about, hey, how are we gonna address this with the end user? Because it was a significant change. But that wasn't the driver. They weren't worried about funds. They were worried about hitting their deadline for their board, and about making sure we were a good partner that could, communicate that change request. So the drivers aren't always the same, and the buyers are changing too. Like how they're buying, how they're subscribing to things, how they're evaluating partners. Short answer, Josh, would be don't go into it thinking you know what's actually driving the consumption until you have that conversation and you try to flush that out. Because you can make moves and pull levers that you don't even need to. That's not what's actually going to affect the outcome.
You know, I want to get on a soapbox for a minute. Let's see how this goes. I used to think growing up when you would see all these successful business people, the infomercials, the real estate guys, the whatever guys, and you dive in and try to get an understanding of how did they do what they do, right? Think the how did Bezos build Amazon, or how did this guy build that company, or whatever, right? And it was just I worked hard. I didn't stop. I was relentless. I outworked. I gave it all my discretionary effort. I treated people nice. I didn't. I recognized that people were humans, and I figured out how to help people have great growth paths. And if I focus on those things, and if I focus on helping other people, that turns out that it comes back to work in the end, provided you don't get taken advantage of. And so I see this similarity in our world and in our industry, where when we get in a lot of discussions, the common thread is we have to focus on the business outcomes. And when I see that and I hear that so much, right? And I hear that and I see that from successful people, I see that from our folks, I see that from partners, I see that from vendors, when we're trying to flush out how has it worked for you. So this common theme is it's business outcomes that happen at the end of the day. So if I take what you're saying as to how we've gotten to if we dissect how we've had some of these successful engagements, both with you and with others, it seems to come from man, once we finally understood what they really wanted, we were all wildly successful and much more successful than we even thought we would be. We were in it for what we thought it would be, but it became something bigger. So is the what I'm trying to figure out here, I guess, is the $1 million question the hard question of, I know you told me that you need these things, Mr. Customer. I know you told me that, like, this is why you're doing it, but is that what's the outcome that you're driving for? Are we just not asking enough of the outcome questions?
Yeah, it's the challenge is in our industry is a lot of the customers are waiting to get pitched, and the part of their negotiation strategy on that side of the table is to kind of mask the intent of what and why they need what they're doing, because sometimes they think they can get a better price if you kind of keep the person guessing. Whereas if you're, and you know, there are bad actors out there who try to take advantage of situations, and there's a lot of FUD in the IT space. So we're dealing with an industry that's kind of brought up a certain behavior. If you can build that trust and lower those defense shields from the customer, and they can tell you what they're really challenged with and what their outcome they're really looking for, then it's amazing how much time is saved on creation of the scope and creation of the service level agreements, and documenting who's responsible for what, and creating that win-win scenario. You know, we tend to qualify very, very hard there, because that's what we're trying to understand. Can we get to that conversation with the customer? And part of that qualification process is understanding, hey, is this person going to tell me what they're really trying to do? Or are they, you know, going to kind of play, you know, some Machiavellian, you know, court games, and try to, you know, execute the 48 laws of power to get their best purchase on a hardware refresh, right? I don't have the energy for that. And then there's so many opportunities out there for partners that you can play that game if you want to, or you can kind of step back and wait for the pain train, which inevitably is going to come to everybody. And you can step in and help them at that point. So it is a little bit of a dance. I think what your technology advisors can really do is ask the question as far as, why are you doing this? Similar to like, what happens if you don't do anything, right? Why are you looking at a SASE solution, right? Why are you talking about ZTNA? Why are you looking for microsegmentation? Why are you doing data loss prevention? And if it's the canned, like, you know, CIO monthly, you know, article that was published by the vendor, and they read off the bullet points as far as what Gartner says is why they should do something, cool. Okay. But if they're no, this just happened, and we saw this as an issue, and we want to protect against these things. Okay, cool. We're getting closer to the business outcome. And that's tough, because if that's your opportunity, if that's your guy, if that's your person at that account, you know, sometimes advisors can kind of get latched on to that opportunity and kind of want to ride it into the ground. Whereas it might, in our opinion, it might not be ready for prime time yet, if you can't get that outcome conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, next couple thoughts here as we kind of wind down, before we kind of do the future and things like that. I want to talk a little bit about, I think you guys, as far as a vendor in the Telarus portfolio, you represent a big swath of things, right? We're 7 years into this relationship, and I think we're still shooting the texts expecting a no, man, I don't do that, and we're getting a yep, we here, and here's an example engagement of what we had, right? So we're still learning all of the things that you have with respective, you know, your core product sets, your supporting OEMs, managed services, all of that. For anybody that's not familiar, I mean, walk us through for a second. You're in security, you're in cloud, you're in infrastructure, you're in managed services. I mean, you're trying to meet the demand of a customer. So you've sort of, put this focus around what the customers need and what most businesses need. But I mean, give us the give us a little bit of highlight of some of the key product sets and focus areas for you guys, so partners can kind of be positioning, hey, when I have a need, but also when I'm going out meeting with my prospects and just doing QBRs, positioning for things that might come up later.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so we built the company a little bit different in the standpoint of there's a labor division, right? So you need people to execute on tasks. There are vendors and OEMs and software solutions out there that you need, and then you need the ability to execute and project manage and deliver, right? So we got people, labor, we have technology, and then we have the process and the project management to deliver. And then we have very, very strong capital capabilities to acquire assets, deliver them as a service, and bundle things together. So when partners are thinking of us for opportunities, an MDR, endpoint protection, storage solution, managed Wi-Fi, those types of services, those all have multiple vendors that we could select and plug in for that use case, right? You need flash fast storage, you drop in a Pure Array. You need, an alternative to VMware, you can drop in Nutanix. We have our edge cloud compute services that we host. You need help tying into AWS or Azure or the Microsoft stack. We're a tier one CSP. So we have all these building blocks from a technology standpoint that we help deliver. But really, the secret sauce is we know how to partner the technology stack that all of us have access to. We all have access to all of these different software vendors and hardware manufacturers and things like that. But we know how to source it, and we also know how to manage it as an MSP. So where we've been seeing a lot of growth is helping organizations assess what they have, and then plug in the next thing that they might need to help augment that. So endpoint protection and security conversations across anything in the security stack, we can help. DR and business replication and business continuity, data center operations, all of that. We built our own data centers. We built two of them, and we operate out of about 16. So some of your partners are always surprised to learn, oh, wait, you guys can do the digital migration from cloud A to cloud B, but you can also go in and pick up all the servers and move them from California to Texas, or from a Florida data center to up the coast further, or just digitally move them. Yeah, we do the physical and the digital, because we don't see it as, oh, we're only a DR company, or we're only a data center company in Northern California. So many people kind of put that limitation on themselves, that, oh, I'm an MSP in this region, I can only support this region. If we thought that, and again, that's not wrong, but if we thought that, we'd still be, rolling trucks in Sacramento, and love Sacramento, great market, but hey, we can deliver. We just finished, a international 30 country deployment with you guys last year.
No, I think it's wedges. It's wedges. It's what I hope people are kind of understanding in that is there are wedges, and there are a lot of wedges. If you need a product, lots of wedges there. If we need a service, lots of wedges there. If we need a scope of work, temporary, 3 to 6 month engagement, a migration can help with that. I think at least what we've seen in this is that these types of wedges don't usually stop. They tend to end with this unknown date, or this unknown, more just seems to come. It seems to be the gift that keeps on giving, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and fully transparent, because we talked about failures and challenges. That flexibility can hurt on the pre-sales, because you guys will call and say, hey, can you guys help with XYZ? Yeah, 100%, good to go. Here's 3 examples of a project we've done before on that. And then we'll get involved with a customer and the partner, and there's the idea that there's a standardized methodology for that specific use case. And it's like, well, there's probably 8 different ways we could attack that. So that's kind of the thing that we're trying as much as we can. We do boot camps, we come to you guys' events, we do training, we do all that kind of stuff to try to build up the idea of these are all building blocks that the client, when they're discussing the outcome they're looking for, we can work with them to build that next step. That can sometimes rub partners the wrong way. Classic feedback you'll get, and this is something we've heard before. Wait, you want me to pay you to scope this? And it's like, well, that's one way to look at it. Yes, you can look at it that way, but it's also no. We're helping you to design an outcome based on what you've told us you're looking for right now. There's a significant value to that. Whereas maybe a competitor of ours would listen to the outcome and plug in like 10 SKUs and have their Salesforce instance pop out a quote. That could work. Maybe it'll work. The sales rep is probably going to pitch it that it's going to work, but that's just not our model. That's just not how we help.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a long game approach. He who plays or she plays the long game always wins. You will not lose in the long game. It might take a second to get there, but I do love that strategy. So I guess as we kind of think about where we go from here, as we wrap this up, um, you know, we're writing the next chapter for the the future playbook. We're thinking, of course, AI is a big component of that. Data readiness, the Microsoft, the Purviews, the Data Dogs, this getting data ready, building my LLMs, tweaking it, keeping it private. Right, those are all future things that are here right now and going to be here for a while. But if you're writing that next chapter based on the disciplines, the real world lessons, kind of take us home with what's just a couple must do strategies right over the next couple years.
I think it's gonna. I think with AI and automation, we've been through some automation situations in the past. I know a lot of people think this one's going to be different. Probably is. There's some. There are some drivers that I think are going to change some of the economy, like at a high level, and change some of the labor situations that we all have. I think that from a security standpoint, with partners and advisors and people who are out there from a technology standpoint, really need to invest in the idea of helping with an outcome, and the idea of your security as an advisor is in your ability to produce results. So whatever that production means for you and your customers, you have to be able to produce results for your clients. Personally, I think that in the services space, in the MSP space, in the AI and integration, I think the idea of bringing multiple people into one deal, or doing a broker model, is gonna be challenged, because if that's the production you're looking to do, I mean, think about it. AI agents are now handling complex conversations. If your value is, I can bring in three people and give you quotes for three people, that's going to get automated in the next couple of years. It's a very vulnerable place for an advisor to be. I would say the ability to produce results, though, and help with complex designs, complex engagements, bringing together multiple vendors into one outcome. That's definitely the ability to help organizations with their IT stack, and that's where I see them going. I've been seeing some really cool assets getting developed by your team and by others that are helping the advisor community get the most out of the opportunity they have with the customer when it presents itself, and then also communicating with them as far as what they can do to help.
Yeah, I think it's a great problem to have, right? It forces us to get a level deeper. It forces us to get into the whys. It forces us to understand all these things that we know that the customers don't understand, right? They're being forced to implement some of these technologies and have no idea how complex, valuable, but how complex some of these things are. So I've always been a believer that the harder this technology gets, while it might be easier and it might automate, the channel thrives in complexity, and the partners truly add so much value. The harder it gets, I get more excited, right? Because the customers need the partners more and more and more. So it's I think it's a good time to be. And I love, I'm a nerd. I might not play Magic the Gathering, but I am a nerd with this stuff, and I do love to see all this new stuff come out, because I just go, oh my gosh, there's so much help that we have to give here. So
Yeah,
good
and
stuff.
they love this. The more people standardize and the more people scale, the more pain is going to come from people who need to operate a little bit outside of that standardization. And that's a fantastic opportunity for the advisors to help.
I love it. All right, Adam Burke, VP of Sales at Quest. Thanks for coming on, man. Good topics. Appreciate you coming back.
Yeah, anytime, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. That wraps us up, everybody. I'm your host, Josh Lupresto, SVP of Sales Engineering at Telarus. This has been Channel Myths, Mistakes, and $1 Million Moves. Until next time.
Next Level BizTech has been a production of Telarus Studio 19. Please visit Telarus.com for more information.